We are back here for the business end here on the Soccer OG. My old friend, in emergency situations, I got to say hi to him. I mean, he's so busy. He doesn't have time for the little people. Herculez Gomez of Vamos Pod on the Men in Blazers Network and also ESPN Deportes and ESPN FC. Everywhere else, really. Football Americas.
I hate you. Why do you like for a fact that you live like
No,
you live a quarter of a mile away from me.
And lower your voice.
You're right. You're right. I got kids, but never get a shout out for a beer, not even a coffee, not even a empanada, by the way, which are delicious if you ever go to the Gaucho Meat Market.
I go to the Gaucho Meat Market.
Yes, I recommend them.
I get the skirt steak from there when I have a barbecue.
Okay,
which, I've invited you a couple times to.
Do this. Go get your steak. Go get your meat across the street. There's a new carniceria, very delicious.
Across from Manhattan Beach Boulevard.
Yeah, it's on Manhattan
the meat
Beach
market.
Boulevard.
Is it frozen meat or is it?
No.
All right, good.
Preparada. You can have vacío. You can have carne asada, skirt steak.
Prices are good.
Decent. It's Cali.
That's fine. I'm not cheap.
It's
I'm
California,
not trying to get
man.
cheap here, man. I know.
No, it's California. It's ridiculous. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into the Cali prices right now. But point stands. You never invite me anywhere.
Well, full transparency, before I started recording, these words came out of my mouth. Hey, next week I'm around. I'm going to reach out to you. Let's have a cafecito, and we'll take it from there.
All right.
It's a two-way street, man. Your phone can call me as well, but I know you're super busy, but I will take the initiative.
Yeah, I get out of work. I come back home like around 7:30. I don't know if you're sleeping by then. I mean,
7:30 p.m., correct?
Yes, correct.
When do you go to bed?
I go to bed like around midnight, 1 o'clock.
Oh, same here. I was working with Lloyd Sam and I said that and I go, man, I feel bad. I have to go to bed earlier, but I do my best work around midnight, or I like to be left alone. You can watch games. Right?
Yeah, listen, you know what it's like when you're married. You got to invest your time with wifey, and there's the time that's left over for me, and it's usually when she goes to sleep. So that's after 10. So that's when I get my most work done.
I did that. Sometimes my wife comes down. She wants you to have a little romantic evening, and it's like 12, and she comes down, and she's like in it was a sexy mood, and she looks at the TV, and it's the Houston Dynamo playing Austin FC, and she just drops her head, and she's like, I can't believe it. This game was from a week ago. I go, I gotta watch it, but it's terrible, Herculez.
Yeah, I know. My kids hate soccer. Like
mine too. My son's grown to hate it because it's around all the time. It's how we butter the bread here.
I take over the family TV, right? I turn on like a game and I'm like, all right, no more, Disney for you. And I turn it off, or no more whatever they're watching, of the moments. And they're like, oh, soccer, come on.
They are going to hate the Euros, obviously. Summertime, and it's going to be, Mickey Mouse Club and Team Umizoomi or whatever they watch being replaced with Czechia and Poland group stage game. That's not going to go over well.
Venezuela versus Jamaica is what I'll be watching in this house.
I'm terrified to tell my family what lies this summer because it's going to be gnarly.
Right? I know.
But we love it. This is the profession we choose. Hey, Football Americas. I listened to it a fair bit. Did I hear Sebi say you guys have done what? 300 some shows?
Yeah, we're approaching 370, I believe. We're approaching, which is wild if you think about it. Because
it is wild because number one felt like yesterday.
It did. And honestly, it's cool because all this really started with people who are watching you right now. Probably some of those listeners or were from the Max and Herc podcast when we were both at ESPN, and a lot of this started there. We would bring Sebi on, and just the whole conversation of domestic football, domestic being CONCACAF based. It started there. So it's cool to see, quite honestly, what we've started is kind of still going. And there's a bunch of, and I say this with the utmost respect, extremely flattered, but there's a bunch of copycat shows that I'm flattered are around. And that show of those networks or that network knows exactly what I'm talking about.
That network.
Yeah, we are proof of concept. We are proof of concept, and I'm glad because that means people are interested in this, and more investment in the game is great for everyone. So on behalf of myself and Max, you're welcome.
Yes, I see people. My little soccer OG, it's a speck on the soccer landscape, and I still see people take some ideas from this on some of the bigger platforms. But again, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Imitation, man.
It
Imitation is the most
is.
sincerest form of flattery. So I'm very flattered. And you know what's cool? Listen, I watched you when I was a kid.
Oh
I
boy.
was like four
Here we
years
go.
old,
Here we go.
watching you call games, and
Punk.
you're a legend in the sport. But now I'm starting to feel what you feel because there's a generation of content creators who love the style, who dig the style of kind of how I present it, or Sebi presents it. And the same way when I was growing up, I would watch Jose Ramon, Fernandez. I would watch David Feitelson. These guys kind of coming up. The style. Now they're growing up consuming our style, and it resonates. So it's very cool to kind of see how this goes.
Yeah, I agree. Sebi was here a while ago and he was very complimentary. He basically gave me credit for this whole genre because I kind of started, I put you under
Ah,
my wing
I
and
wouldn't go that
then
far, but
gave him the keys. He did. He was very complimentary, and I think the world of Sebi, and I think
yeah.
what you guys are doing is, pretty revolutionary. And I've said this to you in the past because we were always so, um, you know, pleasant with the way we covered on the English side. And I looked at the Spanish side. I go, we need some of that. We need two guys basically ready to fight each other over who should play left back for Necaxa. And they're like, and it's a mid. But it's like that passion comes through. And sometimes we get angry for the sake of being angry. I get it. Maybe we kind of go overboard sometimes. But I think that sweet spot, you guys are there a
Yeah,
lot. And
yeah,
taking people to task. We don't take people to task enough
yeah.
on any of our coverage.
Accountability is important. I will say is people shouldn't put stock into what is being said on Twitter. Twitter is
Well
1% of
said.
real life. It's 1% of real life.
Yeah.
In your life, would you run up to somebody that you never met, you don't know, and be like, "You're fucking wrong"? Like
Oh, it
that
happens
doesn't
to me all the
happen.
time.
I'm never walking around the South Bay and somebody comes up to me and be like, "What the fuck are you saying?" That doesn't happen in real life. That's not how it goes. So people need to not put as much stock into Twitter as they think.
Yeah.
But
I still get a "you suck" Bredos when I walk around. So in unison, like 20 people say it at once, and I like pump my fist.
what's the no, I guarantee you, because I hear it now, like people yell Football Americas at me, the
Yeah.
way that Sebi does the call at the beginning. I guarantee you get people going, yeah.
Hey, by the way, there is a commercial for Southern New Hampshire University, and
Okay.
it's like an online university, right? And MLS had a relationship with them, and there's this one commercial, and I sat there and I had to rewind it multiple times. The guy gets his degree, and it's like a great moment, and then opens it up, and this like the light hits his face, and he goes, "I've got my degree," and then something goes, "Yes!" I swear it's mine. I swear it's, and I'm not sitting here asking for money. I just want
You
a little bit of
should.
a rub. I
You
probably should.
should.
I
Yeah.
probably should. I know it's me. If you heard that commercial, I know it's my yes.
So people understand like what's going on here. It's funny because Clint Dempsey, for example, was had some video game thing that he had a partnership with FIFA, the video game, a while ago. And part of me and Clint celebrating together, and the Snow Classico, I think it was that game,
Yeah.
comes on screen, and they had to get my permission to use it.
Oh,
I could seek monetary
damn.
value, so these things actually happen. Clint's my boy, so I only charge him like $80,000. But
You were chasing Clint on those clips, and like everywhere he'd score, you'd be. It's like you were like at the Academy Awards. You
right
want to get
place,
in the
right time.
picture,
Nah, so
like
literally, I'm just like, yeah, use the 2 second clip of me. It's all right. But these things happen, Max.
I know. This is actually more interesting to talk about. I wanted to talk because the Copa's coming. I just want to do big picture, but this is very interesting. Just talking the industry and shop talk, and I know there's a big audience for that, and just people yelling weird things from a distance in Hermosa Beach at Hercules or I
Yeah,
from time to time.
holla at
So
me.
Twitter's so weird, man. It's just gone stranger and stranger. I try not to get involved much, but it's kind of hard to resist. It is what it is.
Yeah,
Especially, I love it. But look, it's going to be amazing during the summer with this U.S. team. Real quickly before we get into Copa, I know the big game, Pachuca Columbus Crew. This is the new format of CONCACAF Champions Cup. The videos this week of the Columbus Crew trying to imitate the altitude they're going to face. Which how bad is it out there in at Hidalgo?
As far as the city or the altitude?
The altitude. Come on now.
So let
How
me give you
bad? Well,
let
actually,
me give you
listen, I've never
let me give you a
been.
let me give you a refresher of what Pachuca is. Pachuca's the oldest club in Mexico. They've been around for over 100 years, um, but they didn't start being successful until 1999, and literally one of the most successful clubs, not only in Liga MX but in CONCACAF in general since. The biggest international win was Pachuca winning the Sudamericana, which was back then the equivalent of the Europa League, but for South America. Um, Libertadores being Champions League equivalent, if we want to go there. They've won countless CONCACAF Champions Leagues. If they win this one, they will tie Cruz Azul as the second best team in CONCACAF's history, only behind America. They've won all five of the CONCACAF finals that they've been in. They're a team that's heavily backed. Their ownership group is one of the best in Mexico. I've played for that ownership group. I've played in that club. Grupo Pachuca, Jesus Martinez and his family, they run a crazy ship. This is a coal mining town. There is very little there. But when you go there, the
Kind of like
streets are
Dortmund.
named.
Yeah, Dortmund. Yeah.
It's worse. The streets are named for the club. The reason they have what they have is because of the club. The facilities are first rate. The facilities used to be called the Joseph Blatter Papelbon. It is no longer called Joseph Blatter. It is, I don't even know what it is, but they have a hospital, they have a university, they've got crazy amount of fields, they've got a movie theater, they got first rate facilities. I've been to the Spanish facilities, Spanish Federation. I've been to Arsenal's new facilities. I've been all over the world, seen some crazy facilities. I've never seen something like Pachuca's. It's that crazy. Um, and they're a team for as successful as they've been, they've done it one way, developing players. They give these young players a lot of, they give them a lot of leash. They let them do their thing and then they sell, they develop and sell. So going back to your original question about the altitude is something you can find it in a lot of places in Mexico, but coupled by the player that they have
The
that
hard.
knows how to play in that altitude, those young kids who run, and these kids are, there's a saying in Spanish, cobijados, they're blanketed by these very experienced players. Salomon Rondon, crazy goal scorer. Osama
How old is
Idrissi,
Rondon these days? He's got to be 30.
36.
Jeez.
Yeah, but he's the leading goal scorer in the CONCACAF Champions League. He's going to be the Golden Boot there. He was Golden Boot winner in Liga MX. I think he was Golden Boot. He was one of four, I believe. But he's a crazy goal scorer who's found correct form at Pachuca. Osama Idrissi on the wing, Dutch-born Moroccan national team player, crazy gifted. Odrosa in the Colombian in the center of the midfield. Couple of foreign center backs, but the rest are Mexican kids. And here's the thing. They will run through a wall for Guillermo Almada, who's got this high press
Yeah.
system,
I rate
but
Almada.
they're kids. Like if you look at the back of the jerseys, it's like
What?
199, 208. That means these kids are registered like on the U20 system. They're not first division players, but he lets these kids play. So the altitude is something, but it's the altitude coupled by the opponent who will just run, run, run themselves into the ground for this coach.
Well, yeah, I think there's some similarities to Columbus. Not that young though, but the work ethic, this coach that really is thinking outside the box, and Wilfred Nancy. I feel bad for the Crew. I mean, I don't know exactly how Pachuca got to host it, but the Crew had to do their second leg at Tigres.
Yeah,
They got through second leg at Monterrey, and now the final here, and it
I
used to be
actually
home and
love that.
away.
I actually love that because it's a point system, right? So like as you would
Well,
throughout the whole tournament, they accumulate the points for a win, tie in regulation, whatnot, and it's sporting justice. So the team that best performed in this CONCACAF Champions Cup gets the game, which I love. Here's a few factors. Do you remember a few years ago when New York City FC won the MLS Cup? Remember that?
yes,
Do you remember who they played?
2021.
Yes. Do you remember who they was it
Was it?
2021,
Yeah,
22? One of those.
yeah, 21. New
Okay.
York City. Yeah,
Do you remember who they played in their first I'm sorry. Yes. Do you remember who they played in the playoffs? They got a after they beat Philly.
because they would. So they got through. That was the 21 CONCACAF Champions League.
No, 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 no. MLS Cup.
Oh, MLS Cup. They beat Philly. Was it New England?
New England. New England had a 21-day layoff, and that hurt them. It hurt them massively. They didn't look like themselves. They ended up losing in penalty
Ah,
kicks.
so but yeah,
Pachuca's going to have a 21-day layoff. They got eliminated by Club America and have not played since. Columbus has been playing regularly
yeah,
and been winning regularly. And they're going
and
to
they're
get Cucho
healthy.
Hernandez back. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to get, and they're healthy. So that could be a factor going into this game as well.
I love it. And I love the timing of it. It kind of settles in with all the European dates with like promotion relegation games. I mean, it's the same day as the Champions League of UEFA. So, Saturday is going to be fantastic. But I mean, I think the home field advantage really puts it in the ball in Pachuca's court. But this is a kind of a coin flip because Columbus and I love what the Crew have done because when it was the quarterfinals, I got on Twitter and everyone was like burying MLS, and they were horrible. Philadelphia got the doors blown off by Pachuca, and Miami laid an egg against Monterrey. It looked bad, and then Columbus was the one MLS team that kept chugging along. And you want a collective from a league to show that maybe you could say MLS is at the level of Liga MX, which I think is the gap is as close as it's ever been. But if Columbus wins this, coupled with what Seattle did, coupled with how close LAFC came last year and also in 2020, I think we're there. I mean, it's pretty.
Okay,
It's
so
a it's a couple sheets of paper,
yeah, so
maybe not top to bottom.
This CONCACAF Champions Cup was always going to be a problem this year. Why? Because you had Club America, you had Chivas, you had both Regios, Monterrey, and Tigres, and you had Pachuca in this competition. If I could choose 5 teams before this competition started this year to represent Mexico, best represent the top end of Mexico, I would have probably chosen those 5.
Yeah.
Maybe Cruz Azul now, but Cruz Azul then was 16th in the league. So it's a great representation of Liga MX. So it's always going to be difficult when you look at who best represents or can represent Major League Soccer here. Well, there's no LAFC. Historically Seattle, what Toronto back in the day, like the best representation of Major League Soccer
Oh,
wasn't here.
I was
Besides,
I would have said
Inter
Cincinnati too, but
Miami,
they were in here and they got knocked out. And Inter Miami got
correct.
in there because of the League's Cup. Probably shouldn't
In
have.
Inter Miami and Columbus would have been my 2 that would have said, okay, they can best represent. Well, Inter Miami laid an egg, and Columbus has been steady. Here's the problem. It's going to mask over a bunch of things if Columbus wins. If Columbus wins, like there'll be those who say, look, the gap is closer, this and that. But they're not going to tell you MLS's record, this CONCACAF Champions Cup, and how bad it's been and how they've been blown out in games in Mexico. And
Just
that's the
this year,
thing here.
though. But this year, I mean, 20
Historically, Max.
last. I know, but look at the last couple
Major League
years
Soccer teams don't historically win in
historically.
Mexico.
But 20, I know, but
That's the
Columbus were able
problem.
to do it. That's very true. But I think with what Seattle was able to do when you had New York City FC also make a semi, multiple MLS, because it was teams where it would be, it was 4 or 5 years ago, it was 4 Liga MX teams, Liga
Oh, for
MX
sure.
teams in the
Nobody,
semis.
nobody's
So there's
saying
progress, but I still
no,
think you're right.
there's absolutely progress, just like there is on both sides progress. On both sides, there's limitations. Like I think the middle of the pack in Major League Soccer is by far better than the middle of the pack in Liga MX. But I still think the Liga MX elite are consistently elite
Yeah.
and have that edge on MLS.
That's an imposing group. I mean, with the
It
finances
is.
they have, and you think of the Regio clubs, Monterrey Tigres,
Because they
America,
go
Cruz.
across the board, like if
Yeah.
we look at the MLS salaries right now, you're gonna find guys making good money, but across the board I've been at Tigres, I've played at Tigres, across the board, like those guys are, if you're on that roster, if you're on that
Like
starting 11,
middle to
like,
the back end of the roster, you're doing really good
oh
financially.
my, and net, and all those players are millionaires, whereas you go to Major League Soccer, yeah, it's great that Lorenzo Insigne is making 15 million, right? But he looks over and he's got a teammate who's probably at 75. You know what I mean?
Well, not
So it's
75. It's a little better
what
than that these
league,
days.
league minimum 75, isn't it?
Well, I mean, not the guys that feature. Yeah, there's probably like some guys yo-yoing that are just
Well,
signing a first team contract that may get a game. But I mean, I could see that Tigres rubbing off on you. You got that Versace silk shirt on. Look at that.
it's not silk, but Just cotton blend.
It's very good. Well, there you go. We know that MLS can certainly close the gap, but the finances have to do it, and we hope, with Gianni
Right.
Infantino saying to seize the moment with the 2026 World Cup. I think there will be some dabbling, but
But by the way, that doesn't that we're not like talking about how good Columbus has been. Like I put them on a league of their own. Like
yeah,
we got to talk for a second about Wilfred Nancy's Columbus. What Tim, Bezbatchenko's done in Columbus, bringing Wilfred Nancy in, stealing him from Montreal. I shouldn't say stealing him, but bringing him from
I
Montreal the
love
way they
that.
did.
But I love that they can go for look the manager. That's the guy we're bringing him here, and it paid off.
Dude,
There's
I
other
had
managers out there that are there's some good coaches and managers in MLS that I think
I
within the league that could happen.
I had Wilfred Nancy on the Vamos podcast, the Men in Blazers Network, and that show will be out soon. But it's a CONCACAF special, for this cup, the final special, and he really is like he's about that life. You have a conversation with him, and it was like a 45-minute conversation because this guy is just talking football, and just hearing him speak, you understand why his team, like why they play the way they play. Like he
Yeah.
transmits, that culture, that DNA. He's very much like this is what we are about, and his teams are about that. So I, I understand why they're here. I understand how they're so good. I understand how they both games against Regio teams, powerful, the most powerful financial teams in Mexico, both games, they went down early. Patrick Schulte, mistake, gifts Andre Pierre Gignac a goal. Like one guy who doesn't need gifts, you gift him a goal and that team doesn't fold. They didn't buckle. They rose to the occasion and eliminated one of the top players in this region. Then they did the same thing, you know, against Rayados and humiliated Rayados. Like there is something to be said about how good this Columbus team is.
Well, this is the problem with this run that he's had, and you probably answer it better. I mean, these Liga MX teams that have the deepest pockets. I mean, because everyone says, where will Wilfred Nancy? I know he's happy there. And Columbus is a club with ambition. But I mean, some of these Liga MX teams who have hired MLS coaches that haven't fared that well to come over there, that why wouldn't they target him? That has to be in play, at least to kick the tires for a couple of these clubs, no, to pursue a Wilfred Nancy.
Yeah, unfortunately, the language barrier in Liga MX is
Good.
massive, and you don't
Good.
see you don't see a lot of coaches who don't speak Spanish coach there. That's just a reality. I'm trying to recall the last one who Spanish wasn't a language he could communicate with.
I can just
I'm
think of
drawing a
the
blank.
Sven Goran as a national team, but I mean, obviously
Right,
that.
right, yeah, and I think that's part of there's a reluctance to go back to that. There's a reluctance to kind of go down that well. Whereas in Major League Soccer, you've seen language barriers not really being too much of an issue. Matias Almeida didn't speak English, and you had Tommy, it's Tommy Thompson. He's learning Spanish, Duolingo. So what I'm trying to get to is it's less of a problem in Major League Soccer. So we've seen it done before. I don't think I recall a coach who didn't speak Spanish in Liga MX.
All right. Well, maybe if there's a guy who can buck the trend, it's certainly Wilfred Nancy. He's impressed so many people, and like you said, I've never seen on the road at Tigres and on the road at Monterrey. You're waiting for the floodgates to open against an MLS team, and it's the reverse. And you see the League MX teams shrugging. What do we do? We're not used to this. And the Columbus team coming waves. It's pretty cool. But again, it is singular. For MLS, we
Right.
got to multiply that somehow.
Of course.
A quick little chat for Copa America, because I did a video recently that I said, can the United States win it? And I said, yeah, I think you can. I don't think they will. I looked at the Vegas odds, and it's somewhere between plus 1,200, plus 1,400, which is pretty decent odds for a team if you want to maybe win a tournament. I mean, they're not going to get those odds at the World Cup. Mexico at some places is plus 1,000, plus 1,200, which was surprising because maybe Mexico has a better draw than the United States. I think they're on the wrong side of the bracket. But what do you think? Is it far-fetched? I mean, we'll have time to see who wins it. My pick would be Brazil at this point, which would be a team the U.S. plays in the quarters of the semis. But if the stars align, they've made the semis twice before in the 4 times they've been in the Copa. Once you're at the semis, you can probably go a little further. I think there are flaws with Brazil and Argentina. What do you think?
Well, the draw isn't favorable. Like they can come in second place or maybe first place against, because, and when I say first place, I mean you can draw against Uruguay, you can tie against Uruguay, and it's from Uruguay, US, who does better against Panama and Bolivia, and you can win the group, right? You could theoretically win the group. But either way, first or second place, you're gonna get a Brazil or Colombia. And even though Brazil's not doing too hot right now, like with the pool, that can change. That can
Yeah.
drastically change. And historically, the U.S. has not done too well against Brazil. And Colombia is a dark horse for me. Like Colombia is one of my teams
Yeah.
that
But they're
they're on the
frustrating, right? I mean, they have this talent.
max 22 game unbeaten streak. They've got some ballers coming at you. Like this team, honestly, like if I'm not betting Argentina or Uruguay, because I don't think Brazil's good enough right now. That's my team. I think
See,
Colombia is the team that I'm dropping money on. And so that's the problem to me is the draw here. Whereas Mexico, for example, which I think they've got a very tricky group. Venezuela is a very good team. Honestly, some very good players playing at a high level. You got Ecuador, who was the second youngest team, if not the youngest team, I believe, at the World Cup. Very well coached. They started with negative points to start off the World Cup campaign, the qualification, and they're the only team that's beating Uruguay. This Uruguay team that beat Argentina in Argentina, they've got one loss, and it's against Ecuador. They're a team right now that I think can make some news, make some waves
I like
in Copa
Ecuador better than
America.
Colombia, to be frank, but they're not as deep as Colombia. But they have the two,
Yeah,
three guys that I
and
think are
then
a cut above.
I don't know what to expect from Jamaica, who's the other team in that group. Jamaica's frustrating to watch because you look at the player pool that they have at any given moment and bring in, and you're like, there's no reason why they shouldn't be a top team in CONCACAF. Yet on the field, Leon Bailey's not the same Leon Bailey that was tearing Man City, a new one. He's not the same player who had double digits, assist in all comps in one of the most difficult leagues in the world, difficult competitions in the world. He doesn't look like that guy. Andre Blake, he's going to be out of the Copa America. Where do you go with all this talent that they have that they can't put together, but they are well coached? So I don't
Yeah,
know.
they did good
What
with
I'm
the
trying to,
coach.
yeah, yeah. What I'm trying to say here is if they can get out Mexico, and I think that's a big if. People think it's a given. If they can get out, the draw is favorable if they win the group. They will play second place in Argentina's group, which could be honestly maybe Canada.
I think it will
Because
be.
I because
That would
I
be
don't I don't
amazing.
I
Mexico,
don't
Canada quarterfinals.
I don't I
Perfect.
don't
That would
rate
put so
I
much
don't
pressure on CONMEBOL to make this a regular thing.
I don't rate Chile. I don't rate
No, they're
Peru.
not good.
So no. So if that's the case, like that's one game, one win against a CONCACAF opponent away from a semifinal. So I think Mexico theoretically has the better chance. Both
But the young
Canada
Mexico,
and
again,
both
they've gotten
Canada
rid
and
of the old
Mexico.
guard, Chucky and Memo
So
Ochoa.
so both I think other CONCACAF opponents have a better chance of getting into a semifinal than the US does because of the draw. I mean, theoretically, Jamaica, Canada, and Mexico have a better chance of getting to the semifinal than the US because of the draw. The US is going to have to go through Brazil or Colombia, which, trust me, won't be easy. I'm not saying that the US isn't better than Mexico, isn't better than Canada, isn't better than Jamaica, but the other side is easier to get through.
I
The
agree.
other side, I just think, is an easier avenue.
I agree. And to get out of the group, as you said, is tougher in that Mexico group. It's tougher than getting by Bolivia and Panama. But if you can get through there, that knockout stage, there's some life. I think, look, Argentina are still remarkable, but for them to keep this going to win a third major tournament, I just don't see how it is. They have a favorable draw, but they've had such good fortune. Messi's getting older. They still have to kiss the ring with that. And I don't think he makes a World Cup,
You
but he's going to
hate
make it.
Messi.
I love him, but it's
You
like
hate
they
since the
can't keep.
Max and Herc podcast days. You hate Messi and Gianluigi Buffon. Those are the
But
two old guys that you hate.
what a memory on you. I just said, it's like, dude, hang it up. Hang it up. Tim Howard, hang it up. Let's move on. Get the next guys in there. Let someone else have a go. Let someone else have a taste. But I look, Argentina, they're very talented, and they just look. They have a favorable run, but for them, if they pull it off, then they are super team. They are
Well, let's
all
let's let's
timer
take
with
a
that
let's take a
Spain
look.
team that won back to back to
Let's
back.
take a look at their. I mean, I'm going off memory here, but like 2014 World Cup final. 2015, 2016 Copa Americas, they made it to the final. 2018, laid an egg in the World
Yeah.
Cup, fine. 2022, 2021,
Jeez, how do you rattle this off, Herc?
Copa America in Brazil,
20,
beat Brazil.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was 21.
Yeah, then that intercontinental, game with Italy, they won that one too. And then they go to the World Cup 2022 and they lose the first
Yeah.
game and end up winning the tournament. Like
Well,
this team
that's
in
my
their
point. It
last
can't keep running
international,
off like this. At some
well,
point, it
hold on,
comes to an
but
end.
fine, but history has taught us that the last what, 7 tournaments, 6 tournaments, they've only laid an egg once. Do I see them laying an egg where I think they will be the most followed, no, second most followed team in this competition? I don't see that. It's going to be Mexico fans, and then I think it's going to be Messi Argentina fans everywhere you
Yeah.
go. And I think they're
What a
massive favorites for a
what a
reason.
draw. What a draw he is. And to see it with MLS and just the
It's
traffic.
insane.
But
It's insane.
but like these
Look at
MLS,
what happened in Vancouver. That is insane. That
but
is insane.
these youth the match recaps when they come out, the MLS games will get like maybe 25, 30, 35,000 views. And then anything with Miami, it's like 500, 600 at least. Every tweet, every IG post in the millions.
Of
It's
course.
Inter Miami has what, 4 or 5 times as many social media followers
Oh,
that MLS does.
and
It's
if you could somehow find a way to make it comparable with whatever Cristiano Ronaldo is doing with his team and make it a head to head with Messi, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, Messi has proven
The
he made the right
interactions.
choice with this and
Oh
quality of
yeah.
life. He's going to be in Miami the whole summer. He doesn't have to travel. I mean, he's got his home base.
Yeah.
La
Yeah.
vida buena, man. Just like you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go meet Messi at the meat market and get some churrasqueria. We'll be good, man. It's my. I'll say this in closing, but I don't know if it's going to happen. We'll have the Gold Cup back in 2025. I don't want to sound like a downer, but it is what it is. But
Club World Cup.
Club World Cup too, but just with the USA. And if there's a combined Copa America again, you kind of pointed it out. The top tier of South America is great. Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Uruguay. Then there's a big drop off. I mean, some of these, maybe Venezuela comes up, maybe Chile revives itself, but they need numbers and they need USA and Mexico and CONCACAF. You have that drop off.
It's
Together
crazy
we are
because
stronger.
if you look at the numbers of, like, let's use a Mexico, who's historically been the best team in this region, right? I don't think that's hard to argue that they've been historically the best team in CONCACAF. Doesn't mean they're the best team today, but historically that's who's the strongest team in CONCACAF. You look at their numbers against South American opposition. If you exclude just these three, if you exclude Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, which have the most exportation of any team in the America or any teams in the Americas, any countries in the Americas, they export the most players by far. You exclude those three, Mexico's numbers against Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Chile, Bolivia, they're very good. I would almost bet without even knowing it right now that they've got a winning record against those teams. They've got more wins against those teams than losses. So yeah, I mean, right now there's a come up on the Ecuadors of the world, the Uruguay, the Colombias of the world, but historically, there's a case to be made. I always hear this, where would CONCACAF teams be if they did World Cup qualifying in CONMEBOL? Maybe one or two CONCACAF teams do make it.
Yeah.
It'd be very difficult because of the atmospheres, but if we're going on just teams, in general,
Well, win
you
your
have a
home
case.
games. Yeah, win your home games. You're
Yeah.
not gonna. Herc, always great. I mean, I could talk. We'll definitely put in the book. So the next time we talk on this, you will not start the conversation by going, "I live 2 miles down the road."
Not
I
even 2
was.
miles. I live like 4 blocks from you.
He lives 4 blocks. Do you have an electric bike yet?
I actually did see one. Did you go to the Hermosa Festival?
Yes, I rode both days down there, and I took the whole
Okay.
family. I took the dog. We had a little basket about the dog. The whole family rode down on electric
I
bikes. I
there's
know
a
that
there's
sounds
a
pathetic, but it was wonderful.
there's an e-bike store that's something with a gorilla, and they look really
Yeah,
cool, massive tires.
do
And my
it.
wife's like, I
Let's
know
start a
my wife,
gang. Let's start a gang.
a bike gang.
Me,
Can you
you, and Heath Pierce. We'll crack some skulls around the South Bay.
That's another guy. You live 4 blocks one way. He lives like 5 blocks the other way. Dude doesn't give me a call. Like, come on, man.
Scumbag, dude. Scumbag.
Unbelievable.
Herculez Gomez joining us here on the Soccer G. Always great to talk to him. A very good friend of mine. I appreciate you, Herc, and appreciate everyone joining.